let's get to
Okay.
thank you, Judith. Let's get to the question number 7. Yeah.
Quel est l'objectif de ces idéologues pédophiles? On voit bien qu'il ne s'agit pas seulement de transgresser les enfants, mais d'asseoir un contrôle sur la population mondiale au travers des enfants, en les traumatisant et en les conditionnant dès le plus jeune âge. Ce qui m'effraie le plus, c'est la perspective des opérations transgenres sur mineurs, car elles sont irréversibles. Ici, chez nous, en France, Farida Belgoul a payé très cher sa dénonciation de l'enseignement du genre que l'on retrouve dans les standards pour l'éducation sexuelle en Europe. Aussi, j'aimerais que vous puissiez éclairer nos auditeurs sur qui était John Money, le théoricien du genre, ce qu'il a fait et ses liens avec Kinsey.
Money. Well, okay, we can start. Well, we have to honestly say with Kinsey scale, you know, which I don't know if you've ever seen what they call the Kinsey scale. A 0 is at the bottom, a 6 is at the top. The 0 is completely heterosexual. The 6 is homosexual. And in between, there's a line, bisexual. So essentially, he was creating a fluid scale, yeah? And you can be anywhere on that line at any time. John Money was a follower of Kinsey's. Dr. John Money, a psychologist who worked at Johns Hopkins University and who was running the sex offender clinic there, to which the Catholic Church would send their pedophiles and pederasts for help to the sex offender clinic. John Money and his aide and colleague, Fred Berlin, another doctor, this one is a medical doctor, Fred Berlin, would process these men and would let them go out amongst the people. The men would be sent from the courts because they had committed crimes against children. And John Money and Fred Berlin would counsel these pedophiles and pederasts who were active pedophiles and pederasts. They would counsel them and then send them out again. And when they raped more children, when they were out, they would counsel them some more. And they would not inform the authorities that these guys had been raping children in the meantime, because they were under care. They were under their care. There's your profession of psychology and psychiatry. And so finally they got hit with some condemnation from the government, who said, you know, you have to report these guys when they're raping children. I don't know whatever happened there. I don't think that they ever did. I think they just simply went underground. But anyway, John Money wrote in the Journal of Pedophilia, that was Pedica, the Journal of Pedophilia, a journal by and for pedophiles and for those who would be able to, as they said, understand the sensibilities of the pedophile, yeah, because they wanted to legalize pedophilia. And John Money, in his interview with the Journal of Pedophilia, was asked, what does he think about the age of consent? And so John Money, Dr. Money, said, well, we have to get rid of the age of consent. You know, it has no purpose. Okay, that's where we have to begin. And he also went so far as to say that if, and this gives you an inkling of the future, yeah, that if a man and a boy, because remember, this is the Journal of Pedophilia, it's being read by men, and it's about sex with boys, because that's what it was fundamentally, not girls. Had one special on girls. He said that if a man and a boy have a sex suicide pact, where one of them dies, it's a sex, sex play, where one of them dies, he says we have to consider that issue, because he said, should the person who lives, that is the man, should he be really penalized, you know? Yeah? And as John said, well, he said, the issue really is one of consent. Here's your consent, yeah? He said, if the boy consented, then his death from this experiment, from this sex play, yeah, should be pretty much legal. I mean, you know, there shouldn't be any problem if he consented. And there's where you get to the issue of consent. Consent can be used for anything. The boy is dead, of course. What consent? You going to ask him? No. So John Money is one of the leaders of the sex transition field. He's considered the father, or I consider him Kinsey would be the grandfather, John Money would be the father. So he helped to create what's called the transgender movement, and he has there's a room devoted to him in the Kinsey Institute, eulogizing him because he's now dead. I think he committed suicide, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, yeah, he's a leader in the field. He was a leader in the field, and his colleague, Dr. Fred Berlin, who also supports transgender, homosexual, the fluidity concept, still operates at Johns Hopkins, is still given credibility. And what this means for the society at large, giving these children these absolute confused signals, telling them, you thought you were a girl, but you're a boy. You thought you're a boy, but you're a girl. Or maybe you're a girl today, but maybe you change your mind, you're a girl, you know, tomorrow. But that can't really work if you're cutting off body parts and if you're stopping their puberty early, yeah, which a lot of the work is accomplished that way, stopping puberty. So, and they cut and paste body parts, and the psychological confusion, Ariane will certainly be able to address the psychological confusion to a child that their parents participate in. By the way, now sometimes their parents don't participate. That's another issue. In the United States, we've had several cases where the teacher has convinced the children in the classroom. She says, oh, now Charles thinks he's a boy. Now he'll be back in a few minutes. He'll be a girl. You know, they come in and they come out. They're girls, they're boys, whatever. So there've been many cases, not many, but they've started. There have been quite a few. Too many is one too many. And where the parents don't know that their child has been given puberty blockers, been given chemicals to change their sex, what appears to be their sex. So where the parents do not know, and even where the parents do not know, and they object, if the school permits it, it's up for grabs. I don't know what the latest decisions that have reached the courts and so on, but it's coming to a school near you.
Right. It's some kind of a horror story, but it's not only an American horror story, just like the TV series. It's worldwide, basically. So very old, just I think died a few months ago from this transgender surgery. It's
There've been quite a few. Their suicide rate is, I think, 40%. Yeah, which is much higher. I think it is 4%. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's much lower amongst the general population. Their suicide rate, their psychological problems do not end with transgender surgery. We know that, And we're experimenting on them. You know, they're guinea pigs. Oh, God, I didn't. They're guinea pigs.
And you're getting Hollywood and sports celebrities doing it, like Bruce Jenner, also the Wachowski brothers, who became sisters, both of them, the ones that directed the movie Matrix, well, the trilogy Matrix.
Really? They both? I didn't know that.
Yes.
But
yes.
all I can say is, for instance, they, like Bruce, yeah, have the financial capability of going to the surgery to narrow their noses so they're more like girls, to lift their hairlines, to put the wigs or, you know, fancy that, to create the bosoms, but they're keeping their parts down below, as far as I know. Jenner still has his. To do all the work, the physiological work, the surgery work, to say this is a female. Excuse me? You know, that doesn't change a man to a woman. And the emotional brain, the spiritual reality of womanhood belongs to woman. Only to woman. Not to imitations. Not to people who wear cross-dress and wear wigs and stick things in their front and call themselves women. No. And take the rights of women that women have struggled so to gain, take their rights, win in running races, win in various you know, Jenner, for crying out loud. You know, he's a big hero, athletic hero. What, he would be up against girls in whatever it is? What does he do? Is he a runner or something? What is he? I don't know.
Yeah, Edgar Hoover was only a cross-dresser, right? He didn't switch gender, you know. So.
I know it. I haven't studied about that enough, so I will leave that one to you. Yeah.
Ariane wants to ask you a question, and then we're gonna.
Vous parlez de l'homosexualité. Certains propos peuvent être choquants ou jugés rejetants envers les homosexuels pour les auditeurs. J'aimerais approfondir avec vous cela, car il existe des homosexuels qui défendent les enfants. En particulier, je connais des homosexuelles femmes qui s'investissent beaucoup pour protéger les enfants. Chez mes patients, il y a beaucoup d'histoires d'abus sexuels infantiles chez des homosexuels. Par ailleurs, tous les homosexuels ne s'identifient pas à la LGBT, et j'aimerais que vous puissiez approfondir avec nous ce que vous avez dit sur la promotion de l'homosexualité par le nazisme, sachant que dans le même temps, les nazis persécutaient les homosexuels. Il y a un paradoxe, comme toujours dans le système paranoïaque, totalitaire, qu'il faut rendre visible aux gens pour qu'ils comprennent les manipulations dans lesquelles ils sont pris. Merci pour vos éclaircissements.
The issue of GLBTQRSTUVWXYZ. The homosexual movement is led today by a lobby, strong, demanding, impeccable lobby, impeccable really. There's a big difference between the lobby itself and individuals, yeah, who are lesbian or gay, homosexual, whatever. Now, it is based on my research, yeah, early sexual abuse is common within the homosexual movement. That's one of the reasons I got involved, was because my research was leading me to what is wrong. I was doing the research on Playboy, it's heterosexual pornography, and yet I was getting backlash from the lobby, the homosexual lobby, gay, lesbian, bisexual, and so on. So I started to do more research on that. And yes, indeed, where the lesbian movement is different today than it was 50 years ago. Just like everything else, you're talking about change has taken place. The lesbian movement now incorporates behaviors as a movement, as a lobby, that was never part of originally the, you know, the lesbian groups or lesbians, you know, in the 1950s, 1960s. So there's been major change that's taken place. Not only change within the group as to the cause, but change as to the cause itself coming out of the educational system, where there's tremendous encouragement for girls to try out sex with each other, much more than for boys, but recently it's boys as well. You know, girls will try to be attractive to boys because you know, the guys like to think that the two girls are making out with each other. So girls do that kind of thing. Sometimes they get caught up in it. Sometimes they don't and they get out of it, but they get out of it much more easily than boys get out of it. So this doesn't change the reality or the healthier lifestyle for people as a male and a female. It doesn't change that reality. I look forward to strong lesbian, you know, groups coming out against the seduction of the children. We don't have that in the United States. I haven't seen that in the United States. If you have that in other countries, let us know, because we need to know. You know, we have the marches by the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and so on. We have the marches for abortion. We have the marches for everything that's bad, but we do not see the other side, the lesbians or homosexual guys, you know, coming down hard on abuse of kids. So I look forward to seeing that. As far as the Nazi situation, that is the idea that the Nazis persecuted homosexuals per se is not true. They did persecute femme homosexuals. They didn't like that because it's superheroes, super males, super macho guys. You know, you had to really look like you were macho. So they never approved of guys who appeared to be femme. And when you look at the data on the number of homosexuals who were actually imprisoned, put into concentration camps, compared to the number of homosexuals in existence, and by the way, it didn't apply to lesbians. There's nothing about lesbians at the time. The number of homosexuals who were identifiably in their records, yeah, the number is minuscule. So, and I mean, I've interviewed victims of the Holocaust who have been there. You know, there's stuff that's been written about the abuse of boys in the prisons, in the concentration camps. So they have really attempted to lay claim for victim status based on the Holocaust, which does not belong to them. Absolutely does not belong to them. Homosexuals were allowed to join the Reich, you know, at the end when they were hard up for guys, yeah. They could leave if they would join the Reich. There are other things. What happened to all of the homosexuals who were in existence at the time? And read Mein Kampf. Read Mein Kampf. There is absolutely nothing in Mein Kampf. The word homosexual does not appear. The word inversion does not appear. Jews are there. I've forgotten. I did an analysis of it. You know, Jews as parasites, Jews as hundreds and hundreds of references in Mein Kampf, and hundreds and hundreds of references to blacks, to Polish, Poles and so on. Not one reference to homosexuality. Well, because, the major book that was written on Hitler as a homosexual by, I forgot his name, but he was a German anthropologist, a sociologist, still documented Hitler's involvement in homosexuality himself. So he favored, he favored those like him and others who were involved in other activities of a like nature. And what's his name? Hirschfeld, Magnus Hirschfeld, who was running the first clinic, if you will, for perversion of any kind in Germany, was a homosexual, was a bisexual, was a cross-dresser, and so on. And he had, the information. I've written about it. Hitler's chauffeur was a Jewish guy who was homosexual, and he lived through the whole Holocaust. No, there's a lot of misunderstanding about Nazism and homosexuality, and purposeful misunderstanding.
Yes, purposeful. Yeah, absolutely. This is the paradox, the confusion that is being maintained in all fields of society to keep us separated and fighting each other. This is the same paradox. The homosexuals in the camps, as the Jews are being sent to the concentration camps by Zionist Jews, and they were actually cooperating with the Nazis. That's why I call it Zionazism, because they all work together. And this is the paradox, the confusion between Zionism and Judaism. And this is the same thing. What the people blame everything on Jews. Whereas it's the Zionist movement and party that it's messing up this whole history period, historical period.
Yeah, I can't even address that part of it yet. I have to do a lot more research on that.
But
yeah, I have to do a lot more research on where Zionism comes into it. But I certainly do know that the attempt to stand on the graves of people, really, and to take the credit today in modern homosexuality, taking the credit, standing on the graves of the dead, in the Holocaust, I have found it to be unconscionable and not justified.
Which brings us to the next question, Ariane.
Oui. Dans mes recherches, tout m'a systématiquement ramené au nazisme et à la société de Thulé avec sa magie sexuelle, utilisant des rituels magiques occultes sataniques avec des viols et des meurtres sur enfants pour conditionner la population. Chez nous en France, Don Desbamos et Alexandre Le Breton font par exemple un travail remarquable pour faire connaître tout cela. J'ai lu dans l'un de vos ouvrages le lien étroit que Kinsey entretenait avec un nazi pédocriminel, mais nous pourrions aussi parler des thèses eugénistes de Margaret Sanger, la créatrice du planning familial international. Bref, c'est un étrange point d'origine qui revient beaucoup sur ces droits sexuels. Que pensez-vous de tout cela?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Margaret Sanger, yes, was, she was a eugenicist, yeah. She wanted to get rid of blacks, yeah, or have them as nice controlled servants, I suppose, to do some jobs. And Jews, yeah, sure, and Irish, yeah, whoever. And so I thought Sanger was Irish. That's interesting. So anyway, so there's that aspect, but and I'm not familiar enough with what you guys have in France in terms of the what you were saying. I don't know these people, those authors. Was they authors or?
Yes, Don de Bamos is a website, and Alexandre Le Breton is also an author and researcher about MK Ultra and mind control programs and so forth, and pedophilia, and he wrote a few books. We're not so many in France, so that's why we mention them. But basically, what Ariane wanted to point towards was the sexual magic of the truly secret society among the Nazis.
I'm not good. I'm not up on that enough to answer properly. I've read about the True Society, Madame Blavatsky, and and I'm familiar with the connection possibly to
Aleister Crowley, probably.
Of course, Aleister Crowley, yeah, and now to the Pizzagate, phenomenon. But I'm not familiar enough to speak to that really well, except to say, yeah, all this was going on, Yeah.
Yes, there was some close connections, between.
Peut-être la question c'est justement qu'elle nous parle un peu plus des liens entre Kinsey et le pédocriminel nazi, sa correspondance, et peut-être l'admiration que Kinsey avait pour Crowley.
Oh, yeah. Well, Kinsey never left the United States. Well, he went to Mexico, I think, a little bit, but he did not travel outside of the country until just shortly before he died. And he went to one of the, I think anyway, there were two important places he wanted to go. First, he wanted to go to Aleister Crowley's abbey in Sicily, but actually, I think he was looking for letters. Yeah, I don't think Kinsey was interested in much unless it had some relevance to himself. So he was looking for letters, which was something that was common to him. He did that with his boyfriend, this young boy that he was enamored of, who died, and who he quickly rushed when he died to his offices to try to find letters that would implicate him in various ways. We don't know what ways, but anyway, something was going on. Now he went to Italy. First, he went to England to see if he could get Aleister Crowley's letters in the museum, in the archives in England. But apparently, he couldn't get them in the archives. So then he went to Italy, to the abbey, to try and get his letters. I say to try to get letters, to see if there was any written correspondence. Now, I suspect there was written correspondence, because there was written correspondence between Kinsey and René Guillon, who is the French pedophile, who was a member of the court in, I think it was Thailand, or Philippines. And he was French. And he had been he had written a book, about sex with children and various other things, just generally have a good time, sex. And actually, Guillon, I suspect, wrote a lot of the legal opinions that Kinsey was using in Kinsey's own book that he did not attribute to Guillon. But anyway, so Guillon, and he were close correspondents. I can't get more than what is obvious in his paper, in his books. I suspect there would be more in the archives at the Kinsey Institute, but I'm not let into the archives at the Kinsey Institute. And so I think also certainly he would have been corresponding with Crowley, and I'm sure that part of the issue was to try and get any letters that compromised him. Yeah.
And also, he was corresponding with the famous Gestapo Nazi sex expert and pedophile collaborator, Dr. Fritz von Balusek. You've heard about that?
Oh, yes, of course. Oh, listen, heard about it. Are you kidding?
Yeah, yeah, that's it. So, yeah, basically, it was very tied into the Nazi.
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. There's a wonderful video on that. I don't know if you've seen it. You know, it was produced by Tim Tate, a British video, which Tim Tate called me one day when he was making the video, and he said, "Are you sitting down?" And I said, "No, you've got to sit down, Judith. This is going to amaze you." So what? So he said, yeah, that they had found Fritz von Baluchek, Herr Dr. Fritz von Baluchek, and he was a pedophile, not a pederast, I don't think, but a pedophile. He had raped any number of children, and he was in charge of a Polish compound during the war, in which there were Jewish children. I think it was just Jewish children. I'm not sure. It might have been also non-Jewish. Well, anyway, and he was enforcing his sexual desires on these kids. And one of the newspapers quoted him as having told the kids, you know, it's either the smokestacks or it's me. And so they would have sex with him, but it all went up in the smoke. They all were killed anyway. And yes, he was, they wouldn't let, I went to Germany to try to get the papers. Oh, it was a whole actual craziness. What they put up to not let me have the papers. We sent people, German scientists, they wouldn't let them have the papers, von Baluchek's papers. Then they insisted you had to be there. Anyway, so I went to Germany, but I was not allowed to see any of the papers.
Thank you, Judith. I have a question before the final questions by
Did that answer the question?
Yes, totally. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. My quick question was, if you can just talk briefly. I know you wrote extensively and spoke extensively about this.
By the way, excuse me. Baluchek was high up in the court system in Germany after the yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, most of them are, actually, and the court system are totally infiltrated by these pedophile rings. Yes, my question was quickly about the porn industry and the connections with big pharma and the mafia and the prostitution. All this whole sex slavery and sex slave industry and mind control of parts of our brains. And the people's brains, the masses' brains that are consumers and affected by it is controlled with, by those predators, basically. So if you can just briefly summarize what the connections and ties are, and because it's pretty essential, I think.
Yeah, well, big pharma has a history, and by the way, Rockefeller has a major part that he and then his foundation played in taking the medical system away from the healers of the time and confining it all within the hospitalization and the pharmaceutical world. Yeah. So once that was controlled, Big Pharma is deeply involved in creating and supporting the corruption of children's minds Why? Because, first of all, the more that you can destroy the heterosexual male-female, family, the more you destroy the health and the resiliency of the children. So you have to, the idea is that not just, impotence is off the charts, okay, males cannot perform sexually the way they could. They rely on pornography. Pornography and big pharma are in bed with one another for various reasons. The inability to function sexually with a woman, with much less a wife you marry, yes, has been a fortune for big pharma. Not only do they produce the Viagra and the other one, I forgot what they call it for the females, but you have the venereal diseases, vaccines for the venereal diseases that you say to the children, to the parents, you must give your child the HPV, the Hep B, and and soon the gonorrhea and the syphilis and this vaccine and that vaccine, because the child is sexual from birth, and if the child is not vaccinated, they will get one or all of these diseases. Well, that's going to destroy their immune system. It has destroyed their immune system. The immune system isn't even up and working until what? The argument is 6 months, or it's sometimes the argument is later. So you give the child at birth all of these vaccines. I don't know what it is in France, but in the United States right now it's 20-some vaccines, and most of them. You're waving at me?
Yes, the same here in France. Just want to mention because vaccines against the hepatitis B at 2 months old in France is
right.
and 2 months later,
Booster.
4 months later, there's another vaccine. And
Right.
it's a sexually transmittable disease anyway. So 2 months later and 4 months later, it's crazy.
Yeah. In our country, as far as I understand, it used to be, and I think it still is, that they get it right when they're born. You carry the little baby in and you just start shooting them up. Well, there's no way their little hearts, their little lungs, their little brains, their little bodies. Point is, there is billions of dollars, billions involved in giving all these vaccines to these children, because not only is that dysfunctional for the children when they're babies, but you then have subsequent diseases, autism, pediatric, all kinds, asthma, everything, because you've broken down their immune system. There's no way children, for the most part, can survive all those make them ashamed that they're virgins when they get married, because if they're virgins, they aren't getting all these. Virginity is now a dirty word, Virginity is a dirty word. Well, thank you very much. If you're able to control your sexual life until you meet somebody who you trust, and who trusts you, and you have sex in that relationship, you don't get all these diseases, right? But so you got to get the children active when they're born. You get them sexually active, in a short period of time. They can put the money into the pharmaceutical companies by the billions. It never stops. It never stops.
Right, right. And in France, for example, we're in the middle of a storm, in the midst of a storm, because the health minister says children must receive like 11 compulsory vaccines from January 1st, 2018. They're on, and it's crazy. It's just 11 vaccines to little babies.
Yeah, it's not crazy if you're in the profit industry. It's not crazy. You're making a fortune. And I remember France had this big scandal, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, where, what was it? The health ministry, what was it that they did? Something awful.
Oh, yes, the contaminated blood with the HIV virus, right?
Yeah. You trust those people to tell you what's healthy for your children? No, absolutely not. But what, you don't have exemptions. Do the kids must have this? I'm asking.
Yeah. Well, it's that they want to make it mandatory, but there's a lot of struggle. So.
Yeah, well, I think you need to remind everybody that the health ministry, killed a lot of kids, right, in the past with this the blood thing. Yeah. I mean, why would you trust those people? The issue is education in the schools. They're mandating that they teach all the children this kind of garbage. It's going to destroy them and destroy the country and destroy the world as we know it and leave us all a bunch of little robots, and dying very painfully. It's not, dying young and dying very painfully.
Yeah, they create the problem to offer their solutions.
This always is the case. This is always the case. You create the problem and then you say, here, I give you the solution, which is not a solution. It just makes more profit for the industry. Right. No, big pharma is in it all the way up and down. Yeah. You asked something about pornography.
Yes, I mentioned also mafia and prostitution and.
Oh yeah. They want to legalize prostitution. Sure, legalize prostitution. Why not? You legalize prostitution and then you lower the age of consent, and you lower it and lower it and lower it. So girls and boys can be used at any age. And I've said for the rights of the child, the UN thing, UN, what for the rights of the child? What is that? Ariane?
Si.
What is it? The UN for the rights of the child. What is it?
Oh, for the sexual rights? No, les Nations Unies.
Les standards pour l'éducation sexuelle en Europe.
Sexual education in Europe, the standards? No?
I don't know. Yeah.
Also, they want to lower the age of consent in France down to what, 11, I think? Right?
11, 11.
Yes, 11 years old.
Plus les renforts. Plus les...
Yeah. Well, you can tell the French people that we Americans stand by 16, which is pretty low anyway, Yeah. So you lower the age of consent. So 11-year-olds can be sent out by their parents to prostitute. Yeah. They can be sent by their boyfriends. Children do a lot of things for their boyfriends. Yeah.
Well, in Germany, prostitutes file taxes.
Oh,
right, yeah. How good.
Dans les standards pour l'éducation sexuelle en Europe, ils enseignent bien la prostitution, c'est-à-dire le sexe en échange de petits cadeaux aux enfants de 16 ans, à partir de 15 ans, je crois, 15 ans et plus, dans les modules de sexualité.
Wow. In the modules for the sexual education in Europe, in the standards, They teach that prostitution is legal, and there's that that there's an
C'est
exchange.
sexe en échange de petits cadeaux.
Sex in exchange for traded for gifts, for little gifts.
Yes, well, wonderful. And in that way, we progress as professionals too. You work your way up and you become a psychiatrist or a psychologist or an anthropologist or a sociologist by having sex with your professors, too. I mean, why not? Yeah. It's a complete destruction of the Judeo-Christian moral imperatives that we have lived by, that created our decent societies, that gave us a standard of living, and it will be destroyed only for the elites.
Vous citez également dans vos livres une sorte de filiation entre Kinsey et Darwin. En somme, nous serions tous des bonobos pansexuels, sauf que Kinsey ne précise jamais que la sexualité chez les bonobos est un instrument de pouvoir et de soumission. Et l'on voit donc deux conceptions de l'être humain qui s'affrontent, soit c'est une bête de sexe, soit c'est un être d'esprit. Et dans la mythologie grecque, le pansexualisme renvoyait aussi au démembrement, à la psychose, au cannibalisme, confère Dionysos. C'est une pente glissante très dangereuse pour notre civilisation humaine, à mon sens, qui s'est toujours structurée autour des interdits de l'inceste et ses dérivés, on ne touche pas aux enfants, et du meurtre et ses dérivés. Il est interdit d'effracter psychiquement un enfant, de le traumatiser. Que pensez-vous de tout cela?
You mentioned also in your book
that
there's...
I could understand it. I know she said something about Darwin. Okay. Let's go back to Darwin and Kinsey. Kinsey wrote his thesis on Darwin. All right. Then Hefner wrote his thesis on Kinsey. I love that, the continuation. Huh? You hear that? It's amazing. Anyway, but Kinsey, of course, really didn't agree totally with Darwin because he believed that we're no different than insects. Darwin gave us, thought the ape or the chimpanzee were closely, but Kinsey argued. He said, I think I'm quoting it accurately, measuring the sexuality of human beings is, quote, no different than measuring the wingspan of an insect, end quote. Okay? That's your expert who's taught the world about human sexuality. It's no different than measuring the wingspan of an insect. Okay, well, fine. So from there, yes, we were. Look, we're spiritual beings. We are spiritual. When we move away from the soul and the spirit, and I haven't been a religious person. I mean, I wasn't raised a religious person, but that's obvious. When we lose that capacity to recognize the needs of our souls, and when we become fragmented, mentally fragmented, spiritually fragmented, we lose our humanity.
Right. It's all about psyche, fragmentation, and trauma.
Yeah.
Basically.
And absolutely, the trauma is the issue. Those are the insults to the human brain, mind, memory, body. Yeah, and the society cannot withstand that, when it's en masse. And that's what's happening through the schools and through the television now, not television, the internet. I keep using old terminology, television. What was that? Yeah. Through the internet, this kind of violence that we saw, that we say is described in the investigating YouTube thing, the Disney violence, the Disney assault on billions of children. My God, it's because these children, no, not billions, I guess trillions, but they view this stuff time and time again. You know, they go back and they view what's on that video. They can do that, and it looks to their parents that they're watching a Disney, you know, something, and they view those things, and viewing that over and over and over again. You know, Elsa and I think it was Spider-Man, buried up to their necks, and the Joker coming and defecating all over them, you know, all over them. A young lady taking off her clothes to seduce Spider-Man, all these things to your heroes and your heroines. This absolutely spawns imitative behavior. Mirror neurons, what we know about the mirror neurons. What we know about the mirror neurons tells us that what's going on in the classroom, sexualizing children in the classroom is transferred from one child to another. Sitting in that classroom when the teacher is talking about sexual things, when they're reading, and the books that they get, my gosh, the books that are designed to sexualize the children as well, you know, novels and so on, denied their real history, denied actually the meaning of education, yeah, which would give them honest history, which would give them geography, which would give them critical thinking, which would expose them to plays that are worthwhile. Even Shakespeare has been taken over by these guys and done, done in drag and that kind of thing. But meaning that changing the meaning of everything. So this was not the reason for actual education, public education. It was to educate children and educate them with reality, which is real history and real biology, real psychology. I don't know about psychology, but anyway, so those are my thoughts.
I think you can measure the lack of real education by the gross income generated by revenues generated by the Marvel studios, you know, with all those superhero movies,
yeah,
in tights with superpowers and so forth. And I think it's over 10 or 11 billion dollars in the Marvel studios. It's just crazy, you know. So
yeah, well, I mean, I wonder the real impact is when those heroes get translated into the internet, obscene internet people that are doing dastardly things to Elsa and to these other, and to her sister and so on. Yeah. Those heroes, those Marvel heroes on the big screen, transposed into the dastardly, horrible people in the internet Disney material. That's where the children will be corrupted totally.
Dernière question. Ici en France, les gens sont totalement incrédules et font encore confiance à ceux que j'appelle les passionnés du pouvoir. La propagande médiatique est réelle et j'ai pu constater avec d'autres des articles dithyrambiques en faveur de l'enfance sexuelle et de l'éducation sexuelle des enfants, des accusations calomnieuses quasi systématiques sur qui tente de promouvoir le débat sur le sujet, une censure des commentaires sur les médias officiels ne respectant pas leur charte sur le contradictoire, nous avons des preuves. Il se passe des choses étranges, par exemple des commentaires élogieux sur mon livre Amazon disparaissent, des pages Facebook résistantes sur ces sujets sont supprimées, etc. La majorité de la population reste totalement incrédule et saute d'autant que rien n'est fait frontalement. J'ai 2 images en tête, celle de la toile d'araignée tissée par les lobbies pédocriminels pour l'infiltration dans tous les domaines, l'éducation, la protection de l'enfance, etc., et celle de la pieuvre. Cette dernière est majeure. On occupe des militants des droits à des sous-sujets. Par exemple, les féministes, on les occupe à l'éducation sexuelle en leur faisant croire qu'elles vont protéger les enfants en leur apprenant à dire non. Ainsi, elles n'ont aucune connaissance du tableau d'ensemble et par ailleurs, on les fait adhérer à la croyance que l'enfant est en capacité de dire non à des relations sexuelles. Or, s'il peut dire non, il peut dire oui. Ou encore, on occupe les militants à des avancées nationales. Par exemple, cause des violences faites aux femmes, en occultant totalement ce qui se trame par l'OMS en matière de droits sexuels de l'enfant. Il est certain que lorsque le consentement de l'enfant sera accepté, c'en est fini de la question de la minorité sexuelle. Mais les manipulations de masse sont tellement habiles, les gens sont tellement occupés par leur vie quotidienne que c'est compliqué de leur faire prendre conscience du danger aujourd'hui réel que courent leurs enfants. Sur la pieuvre encore, ici les enseignants n'ont pas forcément entendu parler de ces cours d'éducation sexuelle, donc le déni, mais c'est écrit dans les textes officiels, c'est en grand déploiement et ce ne sera pas forcément fait par les enseignants. En clair, depuis que je me suis penchée sur le sujet, j'ai découvert à quel point notre système était complètement vérolé jusqu'à la moelle. Aussi, je voudrais vous poser une dernière question. Que faire ? Quelles sont les actions à mettre en œuvre pour protéger nos enfants de cette sexualisation précoce, de ces mensonges, des lois de plus en plus souples et permissives envers les pédocriminels et de ces endoctrinements de masse sur la jeunesse qui sont en cours de déploiement en France?
This is systematic all throughout the globe. So it comes from a group, they meet together, they decide things, they plan all this stuff, and then they go out and they distribute it to the nation. Yeah, the corruption is extreme, and it's taken us 60, 70 years to get here. Which means you've groomed 4 generations. How do you ungroom 4 generations? I wish I could give a nice, pat answer. Vote for the right people. What? What? I think Frida, had the right idea. I mean, the fact that she could wake up so many people and have real protests, that was a major achievement. And the fact that she got attacked and slandered was going to happen because she was accomplishing some kind of, shaking up the brains a little bit, but you're up against huge money. We are up against huge money. It's not just Rockefeller, of course, anymore. It's Soros and Gates and all the rest of these elite people who think that they have, the world owes them everything, and who seek the power over everyone. So I don't know. I mean, I keep, talking, try and get my books into as many languages as possible, because when I'm able to show the graphs, the charts of the babies being tortured, being for science, quote unquote, it still shocks, it still shames, it still frightens, it still stirs people. It does. When you can connect that with, and that's why I stay focused on Kinsey. When you can connect that with the massive changes that have taken place, which everyone experiences, everyone knows their lives are falling apart. Everyone knows that. Who has not lost a sibling, a child, an uncle, an aunt, who has not lost to this sexual revolution? Who? Everybody's lost. Who hasn't paid the price? So you know, people can be awakened, and I struggle to say it was fake science, criminal science, science that called itself science, and that all the scientists pretty much embraced and promoted. What does that tell you about all the science out there? What does it tell you? If nobody, I mean, what? Some little old grandmother had to figure this out? No. So, you know, the fight, you just have to keep waging the battle. I think a major battle now is, for you, is age of consent. This business of lowering the age of consent to 11, the legalization of prostitution, which legalizes babies practically, you know, and for the people to understand that, look, the human brain, remember, we have it all over the place. The human brain does not mature until roughly age 25. So you are expecting children to engage in rational cognitive thinking, make objective decisions about consent, when they do not have the capability to do that. Well-established pictures up the wazoo of the human brain and its development. I hope you have that. You have ours? Yeah. Jay Geed at the Institute, the Health Institute, has done the brain scans on age by age, and it shows right there. And if you need brain scans, for goodness sakes, for centuries we had the age of consent 21 years of age, because it was obvious we don't mature until roughly 21 years of age, you know? So anyway, I'm sorry.
Merci vraiment de tout le temps que vous nous avez consacré. Je rappelle que vous avez 82 ans, que vous avez consacré votre vie avec cœur et courage à dénoncer l'imposture scientifique de Kinsey et consorts. Sachez que vous n'avez pas à travailler en vain, car le flambeau est repris en France, et je vous dis toute mon admiration pour l'ampleur et la rigueur de votre œuvre.
Thank you so much, Judith, for all the time you dedicated. And she must remind our listeners that you are 82 years old. I'm sorry, we shouldn't say the age of a lady, but it's that's our text.
Fine. That's okay. No, I object to that business. I mean, people make. Yeah,
you dedicated your whole life with all your heart and courage to report the scientific deception of Kinsey and his partners and associates. She knows that you have not worked in vain, because the flame has been taken back to France, and she's telling you all the admiration that she has for you and for the scope and the rigor of your work, and she thanks you again, and I thank you again so much for your time and energy and efforts in putting the good word out, you know, and this big Kinsey deception and the sexual predation that is ruling this society and all its engineering levels, from the womb to our death. And thank you so much, Judith.
Well, if you can bring me to France to testify in Parliament, if I can get to Parliament anywhere, you know, the sane people there, I'm happy to do it. Yeah, we did it in Croatia, and it worked. The Supreme Court in Croatia, you know, said, no, we can't have this sex education. It violates parents and all that sort of stuff. So, if you know, I'm always ready for that.
Wow, we're wishing that France would follow Croatia's court system, that you know, where keeping our fingers crossed, but you never know. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to
thank you for being on Freedom Network and an alternative media that doesn't only talk about ufology or conspiracy, but also true and rough and tough topics in society that we live in, and we wish to make a better world for our children, actually, and for ourselves. Thank you. Thank you, Judith. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Ariane.
See.
I do find friends with you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.